The phone rang at exactly 3:47 p.m. I remember the time because I was staring at my computer screen, reviewing security protocols for a client in Dubai. My daughter Emma's voice came through the speaker, barely a whisper, shaking with terror. "Dad, there are 3 men on motorcycles in our driveway. They are screaming at the house. They have chains and they are breaking your garden." My blood turned to ice. Through the phone, I could hear the roar of engines, the crash of pottery, and voices shouting threats about teaching people to respect community standards. I told Emma to lock the doors and stay away from the windows. My hands moved to my desk drawer, fingers brushing against a phone that had not seen daylight in 2 years. 20 minutes later, those same men who came to terrorize my teenage daughter were on their knees in my driveway, begging me to make it stop. But I am getting ahead of myself. This is the story of how Karen Peterson, my HOA board president, made the worst mistake of her life. She thought she was dealing with just another quiet suburban dad. She had no idea who she was really messing with. Willowbrook Estates looked like paradise from the outside. Manicured lawns stretched in perfect green rectangles. Every house painted in approved earth tones. Every mailbox exactly 36 inches from the curb. The kind of neighborhood where property values stayed high and problems stayed hidden. I moved there 3 years ago, looking for peace after 15 years of work that I cannot talk about. Let me just say that when governments need problems solved quietly, they call people like me. When I retired, I wanted nothing more than to blend in, to be invisible, to watch my daughter grow up in safety. The HOA seemed like a small price to pay for that peace. $100 a month to keep the neighborhood looking pristine. What I did not expect was Karen Peterson. Karen was the kind of woman who measured grass height with a ruler. She drove through the neighborhood in her silver Mercedes, looking for violations like a hawk hunting mice. She had been the HOA board president for 6 years, and in that time, she had turned our community into her personal kingdom. The first violation notice arrived 2 weeks after I moved in. Apparently, my garden gnome was not on the approved decorative items list. $50 fine. I paid it without complaint. The second notice came a month later. My grass was 3/4 of an inch too high. Another $50. Then my mailbox was the wrong shade of brown. My fence needed pressure washing. My holiday decorations stayed up 2 days past the deadline. Each time I paid the fine and made the correction. I kept my head down, followed the rules, tried to be the perfect neighbor. My military training had taught me to pick my battles, and these seemed too small to matter. Other neighbors were not so patient. The Johnsons next door had received 17 violation notices in 6 months. Mrs. Chen across the street got fined for having the wrong color roses. The young couple at the end of the block faced a lien on their home because they could not afford to repaint their garage door the exact shade of beige that Karen demanded. But Karen was smart. She never pushed too hard against anyone who might fight back. She targeted the elderly, the young families, the people who could not afford lawyers or lengthy battles. She had turned fear into a weapon, and she wielded it with surgical precision. I watched it all from my front porch, drinking my morning coffee, cataloging every abuse of power. Old habits die hard, and I had spent years learning to read people, to understand their weaknesses, to spot the moment when quiet authority becomes dangerous tyranny. Karen Peterson had no idea that her newest neighbor was taking notes. The breaking point came on a Tuesday in October. I was at work, consulting on a security project for a tech company downtown, when my phone buzzed with a text from Emma. She had just gotten her driver's license the week before, and I was still getting used to the idea of her driving alone. The text was simple. "Dad, the HOA lady is yelling at me again." I called her immediately. Emma's voice was shaking as she told me what happened. She had been getting the mail when Karen pulled up in her Mercedes, got out, and started screaming about reckless driving. Emma had never driven faster than 20 miles per hour in our neighborhood, but Karen accused her of speeding, of being a danger to children, of being a product of poor parenting. She took pictures of me, Dad. She said she was going to make sure I never drive in this neighborhood again. That night I made a decision. I put on my best suit, grabbed the folder I had been keeping on HOA violations, and walked across the street to Karen's house. I was going to handle this like a civilized adult. I was going to give her one chance to back down. I should have known better. Karen Peterson's house was a monument to perfection. Every blade of grass trimmed to the same height, every flower in neat, mathematical rows. The kind of place that looked more like a magazine cover than a home. I stood on her doorstep that evening, wearing my best suit, holding my folder of documentation. When she opened the door, I saw something in her eyes that I recognized from my years overseas. The look of someone who had been drunk on power for so long that they had forgotten what consequences looked like. "Mr. Davidson," she said, not even trying to hide her smirk, "what brings you to my door?" "We need to talk about my daughter." "Your daughter needs to learn respect for community standards." I kept my voice level professional. Emma was not speeding. She was not breaking any rules. You had no right to photograph her or to verbally abuse her. Karen's laugh was sharp, calculated. "I have every right to document violations and safety concerns. Your daughter is a menace, just like her father." "What exactly does that mean?" "It means that some people think they can move into our community and ignore our standards. It means that some people need to learn their place." Behind her, I heard footsteps. A man appeared in the hallway, tall and broad, wearing a leather jacket. His arms were covered in tattoos, and he had the kind of smile that belonged in a police lineup. "Everything okay, baby?" he asked, his eyes fixed on me. "Rick, this is the neighbor I was telling you about, the one who thinks rules do not apply to him." Rick stepped forward, close enough that I could smell the beer on his breath. Maybe it is time someone taught him some manners. I looked at both of them, these two people who thought they held all the power in this perfectly manicured neighborhood. Karen with her clipboard and her measuring tape. Rick with his leather jacket and his implied threats. "My daughter is off limits," I said quietly. "Do not approach her again. Do not photograph her. Do not speak to her. Are we clear?" Karen's smile widened. "Or what?" "Or we will have a problem." Rick stepped closer. "What kind of problem, old man?" I looked at him for a long moment, taking in the details. The motorcycle club patches on his jacket, the prison tattoos on his knuckles, the way he carried himself like someone who had spent years using intimidation to get what he wanted. "The kind of problem you are not equipped to handle." Rick laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "You threatening me?" "I am giving you information." I turned to leave, but Karen's voice stopped me. "Mr. Davidson," she called out, "you should know that Rick has friends, lots of friends, the kind of friends who do not like it when people disrespect their loved ones." I looked back at her, standing in her perfect doorway, her perfect house, her perfect little kingdom of fear and control. "Then you should choose your battles more carefully." 2 days later, Emma came home from school crying. Karen had been waiting by the mailboxes, she said, waiting with her camera and her clipboard and her measuring tape. She had followed Emma's car, taking pictures, shouting about reckless endangerment. "She said she was going to make sure I never drive again, Dad. She said she was going to have me arrested. I held my daughter while she cried, feeling something cold and familiar settling in my chest. It was the same feeling I had gotten in Afghanistan when local warlords thought they could intimidate American contractors. The same feeling I had gotten in Colombia when cartel members thought they could threaten my team. It was the feeling of a line being crossed. That night I sat in my study, looking at the phone in my desk drawer, the one with the encrypted contacts and the international numbers, the one I had promised myself I would never use again. I picked up the phone and made a call. "Marcus, it is John Davidson. I need a favor." The sound of motorcycle engines at 3 in the afternoon was not something you heard in Willowbrook Estates. The neighborhood was designed for quiet luxury, for the soft hum of lawn mowers and the distant chatter of children playing. The roar of 3 Harley-Davidson motorcycles cutting through that silence was like thunder before a storm. I was in a meeting with a client 40 minutes away when my phone rang. Emma's number flashed on the screen, and something in my gut told me to answer immediately. "Dad," her voice was small, scared. "There are men outside." "What kind of men?" "3 of them on motorcycles. They are in our driveway and they are yelling things." I could hear the engines revving in the background, loud and aggressive. I could hear voices shouting, but could not make out the words. "Emma, I need you to go inside right now. Lock all the doors. Stay away from the windows." "Dad, they are destroying your garden. They kicked over all the flower pots. One of them has a chain." My blood turned to ice. "Emma, listen to me very carefully. Go to your room, lock the door. Do not come out until I get there." I hung up and immediately called Marcus. He answered on the first ring. "It is happening now," I said. "3 bikers at my house. My daughter is inside alone. I am already moving, 20 minutes out." "Make it 15. I left the meeting without explanation, broke every speed limit between downtown and my neighborhood. But first, I made another call, this one to a number I had not dialed in 3 years. "Thompson here. It is Davidson. I need eyes on 1247 Maple Lane, Willowbrook Estates, right now." "John, Jesus, I thought you were retired." "I am, but retirement does not mean I forgot how to call in favors." "What are we looking at?" 3 hostiles on motorcycles, harassing my daughter. I need full profiles, criminal histories, current legal status, and I need it in 10 minutes. Consider it done." The drive to my neighborhood felt like the longest 20 minutes of my life. Every red light was an eternity. Every car in front of me was moving too slowly. All I could think about was Emma, alone in the house, listening to those engines, those voices, those threats. When I turned onto Maple Lane, I could see them from 3 blocks away. 3 motorcycles parked in my driveway like they owned the place. 3 men in leather jackets standing around my front yard, shouting at my house. I parked 2 houses down and called Emma. "Dad, they are still here. They broke the garden gnome. They are saying things about teaching lessons and showing respect." "Emma, I am outside. I am going to handle this. Do not come out until I tell you." "Dad, please be careful." "I will be fine, sweetheart. Just stay inside." I hung up and walked toward my house. As I got closer, I could see the damage. My carefully maintained flower beds were destroyed. My garden gnome lay in pieces. The windows of my house were covered with what looked like eggs. The 3 bikers saw me coming and turned to face me. They were big men, the kind who had spent years using their size and their machines to intimidate people. They wore leather jackets covered in patches from motorcycle clubs I recognized from FBI briefings. Their arms were covered in tattoos, their faces hard with years of violence. The leader stepped forward, a man with a gray beard and eyes like chips of ice. "You Davidson." "That depends on who is asking." "Name is Tank. We are here to deliver a message." "What message is that?" "Message is that you need to learn some respect. Message is that you need to understand how things work in this neighborhood." "And who sent you to deliver this message?" Tank smiled, showing teeth like broken glass. "Someone who cares about community standards." My phone buzzed. A text from Thompson with 3 attachments: criminal histories, parole records, current addresses, everything I needed to know about the 3 men standing in my driveway. I looked at Tank, then at his 2 companions. Big men with big bikes and small brains. Men who thought intimidation was the same as power. "Tank Morrison," I said quietly. "Age 47, 3 felony convictions, currently on parole for aggravated assault. Violation of travel restrictions alone is enough to send you back to prison." Tank's smile faltered. "How do you know that?" "The same way I know that Danny Reeves there has a custody hearing next week, and that visiting my house violates his restraining order." The second biker, a thin man with nervous eyes, stepped backward. "And the same way I know that Carlos Mendez has been selling meth out of his garage, and that his parole officer is very interested in his recent activities." The third biker's face went white. "Now," I continued, my voice never rising above a conversational level, "you have 30 seconds to get on your bikes and leave, or I make 3 phone calls that will destroy all of your lives." Tank tried to regain his composure. "You think you can threaten us?" "I do not make threats, I make promises." That was when the black SUV pulled up at the end of my driveway. The black SUV sat at the end of my driveway like a period at the end of a sentence. Dark tinted windows, government plates, the kind of vehicle that most people pretend not to notice. The 3 bikers noticed. Tank's eyes flicked from the SUV to me, then back to the SUV. "Who the hell is that?" "That depends on how the next 3 minutes go." My phone rang. 3 different phones, actually. Tank's phone first, then Danny's, then Carlos's. They all answered with the same confused expression. "Tank Morrison." The voice was loud enough for me to hear. "This is Officer Bradley with the State Parole Board. We need to discuss your current location." Tank's face went pale. I can explain." "Danny Reeves." Another voice, another phone. "This is Susan Chen from Child Protective Services. We need to discuss your custody arrangement." Danny dropped his phone. It clattered on my driveway, the voice still talking. "Carlos Mendez." The third voice was the coldest. "This is Detective Williams. We need to talk about your garage." Carlos looked like he was going to be sick. I stepped closer to the 3 men who had come to terrorize my daughter. "Gentlemen, let me explain something to you. You came to my house thinking you were dealing with a suburban dad who would be intimidated by leather jackets and loud engines. You were wrong." Tank tried to salvage the situation. "Look, man, we were just supposed to scare you a little, show you that the neighborhood has rules." "The neighborhood does have rules, but you just broke the most important one." "What rule is that?" "You threatened my daughter." I pulled out my phone and showed them a photo. It was a satellite image of Tank's house, taken in real time. His wife was visible in the backyard, hanging laundry. "Your wife Susan is a nurse at St. Mary's Hospital. She works the night shift. She drives a 2018 Honda Civic, license plate number 7G4HJK. Tank's eyes went wide. "How do you know that?" I showed him another photo. Danny's ex-wife picking up their kids from school. Danny, your custody hearing is next Tuesday at 2 p.m. Judge Martinez does not like it when fathers violate restraining orders. Danny was shaking now. Please, man, I got kids. The third photo showed Carlos's garage, the one where he stored more than just motorcycles. Carlos, that shipment you picked up last week, the one you thought nobody saw, Detective Williams is very interested in it. Carlos fell to his knees. Please, I cannot go back to prison. Then you should not have come to my house. The passenger door of the black SUV opened. A man in a dark suit stepped out but did not approach. He just stood there, hands clasped behind his back, watching. Tank's phone rang again. This time it was his wife. Tank, there are men at our house. They are asking questions about you. They want to know where you are. Tank looked at me with something approaching terror. What do you want? I want you to understand that you made a mistake. You came here thinking you were dealing with someone who would be afraid of you. Instead, you are dealing with someone who knows where you live, where your families live, where you work, where you bank, where you hide your secrets. We will leave, Danny said, his voice barely a whisper. We will leave right now. No, I said quietly. You will not leave, not yet. I pulled out a small device, something that looked like a garage door opener. I pressed a button, and all three motorcycles died simultaneously. The engine sputtered, coughed, and went silent. What did you do? Tank demanded. I just disabled your ignition systems. Simple electromagnetic pulse. Very targeted, very effective. You cannot do that. I just did. Carlos was crying now. Please, man, my kids need me. Your kids need a father who does not terrorize teenage girls. Tank tried one more time to assert authority. Look, we were just following orders. Karen Peterson paid us to send a message. Karen Peterson does not have the authority to send anyone anywhere, but she does have the authority to face the consequences of her choices. I looked at the three men who had come to my house as predators and were now begging like prey. Here is what is going to happen. You are going to call Karen Peterson. You are going to tell her exactly what she has done. You are going to explain to her that she has made an enemy she cannot handle. And if we do that, Tank asked, then maybe your family stays safe. Maybe your parole officers forget to check your GPS locations. Maybe Detective Williams decides to focus on other cases. And if we do not? I nodded toward the black SUV. Then you find out what happens when you threaten the family of someone who used to solve problems for the government. Tank looked at his companions, then back at me. We call Karen. We tell her it is over. No, I said. You call Karen. You tell her it is just beginning. The man in the dark suit got back in the SUV. The vehicle pulled away, but I knew it was not going far. It would be watching, waiting, ready to act if needed. Tank dialed Karen's number with shaking hands. Karen, it is Tank. We have a problem. The phone call to Karen Peterson was supposed to be a quick report. Tank had planned to tell her that the message was delivered, that the troublesome neighbor had been put in his place, that the problem was solved. Instead, Tank found himself stammering into the phone, his voice shaking like a child confessing to a broken window. Karen, we need to talk, right now. Did you deliver the message? Karen's voice was sharp, impatient. There is no message. There is no intimidation. There is just, Jesus, Karen, what did you get us into? I could hear Karen's confusion through the phone. What are you talking about? You scared him, right? You showed him who runs this neighborhood. Karen, he knows everything. He knows our names, our addresses, our families. Parole officers are calling. Social services are calling. The police are calling. There was a long pause. Then Karen's voice, smaller now, uncertain. That is impossible. He has photos of our houses, Karen. Real-time photos. There are government cars watching us. He knows things about us that we never told anyone. You are overreacting. I am on my knees in his driveway, Karen. Danny is crying. Carlos is talking about running. This is not overreacting. Another pause. Who is this guy? I do not know, but he is not who you think he is. He is not some suburban dad you can push around. He is something else, something dangerous. I took the phone from Tank's trembling hands. Hello, Karen. Mr. Davidson, what is going on? What did you do to my friends? I gave them information, the same information I am going to give you. What information? The information that shows you have been embezzling money from the HOA account. The information that shows you have been taking bribes from contractors. The information that shows you have been falsifying inspection reports. The silence on the other end of the phone was deafening. The information that shows you committed mortgage fraud when you bought your house. The information that shows you have been running an illegal home-based business without permits. The information that shows you have been filing false insurance claims. That is impossible. Karen Peterson, age 52, divorced, one child in college. You work for Premier Realty, but you have been skimming money from escrow accounts. Your real estate license is up for review next month because of client complaints. How do you know all this? The same way I know that you owe $37,000 in back taxes. The same way I know that your mortgage is 3 months behind. The same way I know that the IRS is planning to audit your business accounts. I could hear Karen's breathing, fast and shallow. What do you want? I want you to understand that you made a mistake. You targeted my daughter. You sent criminals to my house. You thought you were dealing with someone who would be afraid of you. I was just trying to maintain community standards. You were trying to maintain your little kingdom of fear. But kingdoms fall, Karen, and yours is about to collapse. The 3 bikers were still on their knees in my driveway, listening to their world crumble through a phone call. Tank's wife was still calling, crying about the men at their house asking questions. Danny's ex-wife was threatening to call the police. Carlos's mother was demanding to know why detectives were searching his garage. Karen, I continued, you have 30 minutes to get to my house. You are going to explain to these 3 men why you sent them to terrorize a teenage girl. You are going to explain to them why you put their families in danger. You are going to explain to them why you destroyed their lives for your petty revenge. I cannot do that. Yes, you can. Because if you do not, then tomorrow morning your bank accounts will be frozen. Your real estate license will be suspended. Your mortgage company will receive copies of your tax returns, and the IRS will receive copies of your business records. You cannot do that. Karen, I have been doing this for 15 years. I have toppled governments, bankrupted corporations, and destroyed criminal organizations. You are a small-town real estate agent who thought she could intimidate a suburban dad. You are not even a challenge. The phone went silent, then Karen's voice barely a whisper. What if I apologize? Apologies do not fix what you have done. What if I resign from the HOA board? Resignation does not fix what you have done. Then what do you want? I looked at the 3 men kneeling in my driveway, their tough guy facades completely shattered. I looked at my house, where my daughter was hiding, afraid to come out because of what this woman had done. I want justice. What does that mean? It means you have 30 minutes to get here. It means you are going to face the consequences of your choices. It means you are going to learn that actions have consequences. And if I do not come, then you find out what happens when you threaten the family of someone who used to solve problems for people who could not solve them themselves. I hung up the phone and looked at the three bikers. Your boss is on her way. I suggest you think about what you are going to say to her. Karen Peterson arrived at my house 23 minutes later, driving her silver Mercedes like she was late for her own execution. Which, in a way, she was. She parked behind the three motorcycles, her hands gripping the steering wheel like it was the only thing keeping her from falling into an abyss. Through the windshield, I could see her face, pale and drawn, the arrogant confidence that had defined her for years completely gone. The three bikers were still in my driveway, their phones buzzing constantly with calls from panicked family members, angry parole officers, and suspicious law enforcement agencies. They looked up when Karen's car door slammed, their eyes filled with the kind of rage that comes from realizing you have been used. Karen, Tank called out as she approached. What the hell did you get us into? Karen Peterson, who had ruled this neighborhood through fear and intimidation for 6 years, looked at the three men she had hired to terrorize my daughter. Her voice was shaky, uncertain. I do not understand what happened. What happened, I said, stepping forward, is that you made a mistake. You thought you were dealing with someone who would be intimidated by your tactics. You were wrong. I pulled out a manila folder, thick with documents and photographs. This is what happened, Karen. This is what you created when you decided to target my family. I opened the folder and showed her the first photograph. It was a picture of her at the bank, depositing a check that should have gone to the HOA account. That was taken 6 months ago. You deposited a check for landscaping services into your personal account instead of the community fund. Karen's face went white. That was a mistake. No, it was theft, and this. I showed her another photograph. This one showed her meeting with a contractor behind the community center, an envelope of cash changing hands. This shows you taking a bribe from Morrison Construction to approve their bid for the playground renovation, even though their bid was 30% higher than the competition. I never. And this shows you falsifying the inspection report for the Henderson house, claiming foundation problems that did not exist so you could force them to sell. Karen looked at the photographs like they were evidence of war crimes. How did you get these? The same way I got your bank records, the same way I got your tax returns, the same way I got your business correspondence. I showed her more documents, bank statements showing unreported income, email chains discussing illegal activities, phone records showing conversations with known criminals. Karen Peterson, I said quietly, you have been running a criminal enterprise disguised as a homeowners association. You have been stealing money, taking bribes, falsifying documents, and intimidating residents. You have been doing it for years. That is not true. It is all true. And tomorrow morning, copies of all this evidence will be delivered to the FBI, the IRS, the state attorney general, and the local district attorney. Karen's legs gave out. She sat down on my driveway, her perfect composure finally cracking. Please, I have a daughter in college. I have a mortgage. I have. You have a daughter in college that you have been putting at risk with your criminal behavior. You have a mortgage that you have been paying with stolen money. You have built your entire life on a foundation of lies and theft. Tank stood up, his anger finally overcoming his fear. Karen, you told us this guy was just a troublemaker. You said he was bothering you with complaints. You never said he was, whatever he is." "I did not know," Karen whispered. "You did not know because you never bothered to find out. You saw a quiet neighbor and assumed he was weak. You saw someone who paid his fines without complaint and assumed he was a victim." I knelt down beside Karen, my voice dropping to a whisper. "You made the same mistake that dictators and warlords make all over the world. You confused silence with weakness. You confused compliance with submission." Karen looked up at me, tears streaming down her face. "What do you want?" "I want you to understand what you have done. You sent violent criminals to my house to intimidate my teenage daughter. You put my family in danger because you wanted to maintain your little kingdom of fear. I am sorry. Sorry does not fix what you have done. Sorry does not erase the terror you put in my daughter's eyes. Sorry does not undo the damage you have caused to this entire community." I stood up and looked at the three bikers. "Gentlemen, you have a choice. You can continue to work for someone who has been lying to you, who has put your families in danger, who has destroyed your lives for her petty revenge. Or you can distance yourselves from her and hope that the authorities show mercy." Tank looked at Corinne with disgust. "We are done. Do not call us again. Do not contact us again. As far as we are concerned, we never met you." The three bikers walked away, their motorcycles still disabled, their phones still buzzing with calls from law enforcement. They would have to find their own way home, their own way out of the mess that Corinne had created. Corinne Peterson sat on my driveway, surrounded by the evidence of her crimes, her perfect life crumbling around her. The woman who had terrorized an entire neighborhood with her petty tyranny had been reduced to a sobbing, broken figure begging for mercy. "What happens now?" she asked. I looked at her. This woman who had made my daughter cry, who had sent criminals to my house, who had turned our neighborhood into a prison of fear. Now you face the consequences of your choices. 3 weeks later, I sat on my front porch, drinking my morning coffee and reading the newspaper. The headline on the local section read, "Former HOA President Faces Federal Charges." Below it was a photo of Corinne Peterson being led away in handcuffs, her perfect blonde hair disheveled, her eyes red with tears. The article detailed the charges: embezzlement, fraud, bribery, racketeering. The FBI had raided her house at dawn, seizing computers, documents, and boxes of evidence. Her real estate license had been suspended. Her assets had been frozen. Her mortgage was in foreclosure. The three bikers had fared better. Tank had violated his parole and was back in prison, but his sentence was lighter because he had cooperated with investigators. Danny had lost his custody battle, but his ex-wife had agreed to supervised visitation. Carlos had been arrested for drug possession, but his lawyer was negotiating a plea deal that would keep him out of federal prison. Corinne Peterson's boyfriend Rick had disappeared the night of the confrontation. His motorcycle was found abandoned in a parking lot 50 miles away. He had not been seen since. The neighborhood had changed. The new HOA board, elected in an emergency meeting, had eliminated most of Corinne's ridiculous rules. Grass height was no longer measured with rulers. Garden gnomes were welcome. Holiday decorations could stay up as long as homeowners wanted. The atmosphere of fear that had poisoned our community for years was gone. Neighbors who had not spoken in months were talking again. Children played in yards without worrying about violation notices. The elderly residents who had been terrorized by Corinne's measuring tape were finally able to enjoy their homes. Emma had recovered from her ordeal, but she was different now. She had seen her father transform from a quiet suburban dad into something else entirely. She had learned that the man who helped her with homework and drove her to soccer practice had once been someone who governments called when they needed problems solved. "Dad," she said one evening as we sat on the porch, "what did you used to do, really?" I looked at my daughter, this beautiful, intelligent young woman who had been terrorized by a petty tyrant and her criminal associates. She deserved to know the truth. I solved problems for people who could not solve them themselves. I worked for governments, for corporations, for organizations that needed things done quietly and efficiently. What kind of problems? The kind that require very specific skills, the kind that most people cannot handle. Are you still dangerous? I smiled. I am still your father. I am still the man who makes pancakes on Saturday mornings and helps you with calculus homework. But yes, I am still dangerous to people who threaten my family. Emma nodded, processing this information. Good, I like knowing that. The next morning, I received a call from Marcus. "How are you holding up?" he asked. "Better, the neighborhood is peaceful again. Emma is safe. Karen Peterson is facing 20 years in federal prison." Any regrets? I thought about that question. Karen Peterson had been a bully, a criminal, a woman who had terrorized an entire community for her own petty satisfaction. But she was also a human being, a mother, someone whose life had been destroyed by her own choices. "No," I said finally, "no regrets. She made her choice when she sent those men to terrorize my daughter. She made her choice when she decided that power was more important than people. She made her choice when she forgot that actions have consequences." What about the bikers? They made their choices too. They chose to intimidate a teenager for money.